Good morning and welcome back to White Mountains Today here on White Mountain TV 16. And joining us in the studio is Brian Solomon from the Conway Scenic Railroad. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I am doing very well. So Brian, you're new to this position, but not new to trains.
No, not at all. No, I've been doing railways my entire life. I've done 60 books on railroads, both in the United States and around the world. I've spent my life on trains, on locomotives. It's just been the thing. That's what I do. I edited a railway magazine called Pacific Rail News in the 1990s for a couple of years. I mean, my dad was involved in transport planning, and he himself was a railway enthusiast. So from the time I could breathe, I was pretty much trackside. There's a picture of me in a stroller eating an ice cream, looking very displeased in front of a New York Central locomotive. The New York Central went out of business, or was merged into Penn Central in 1968. So that kind of puts things in a little bit of context.
Yeah.
I've been at it a long time. So.
Well, that's terrific. So they're lucky to have you and all your knowledge.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I've known the owners. I tell people that I've known the owners a long time. I've known Dave Swerk for almost 40 years. And when Dave and Rhonda got married in 1987, Dave asked me if I would do their wedding photos for them. And they got married on a train.
That's great.
And that seems like a really long time ago. So we have a long history together. And Dave's often been my go-to guy for nuts and bolts kind of things. When I've been doing books on locomotives, if I had a really specific question on how they work, Dave's been the guy I'd call up.
Oh, that's great.
He needed some help a couple of times in the last couple of years, and so he's called me in to do some work for him. And last summer he had me up here for a couple of months doing some media work, doing video and photography and different things, and a position came open, so here I am.
Oh, that's great. And one of the things that we were talking about before we came on, about the history of the Conway Scenic Railroad, it's not just a train ride. The history of the Conway Scenic Railroad is amazing.
There's so much history. This is as train rides go, this is one of the world's top 10. And I mean that, I really do. I featured this particular, the ride up to Crawford Notch, I featured that in at least 2 or 3 different books before working here, not knowing that I would ever work here. I mean, it really is, the scenery is amazing, and the history of the railroad is really, really interesting. And that's why I think when people travel on our trains, we have narration, and it gives you a little bit of context and kind of tells you the history. I mean, we would not be sitting here today if it wasn't for the railroad. This was actually former Boston and Maine property.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this whole park that we're in was all the Boston and Maine. And the Boston and Maine's predecessor that established the station, it was built to make this as the gateway to the White Mountains.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fundamental things about Conway Scenic and its history and its tie into the past. And then of course you have the former Maine Central, the Mountain Division, which is how we get up to Crawford Notch. So we're a blend of two railroads that were there was a family link between them as well.
Well, that's there were many tracks back then. We don't use many of the tracks in the United States anymore, but
not as many as we should.
No, but thankfully we've got the Conway Scenic Railroad, and I'm sure there are many people who watch and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've seen this station." Well, you really got to go into the station. You got to start at the station and just take a look at that building, and then kind of go from there.
Well, it's a one of a kind. I mean, our station is 1874. It's a Russian revival building. There was never anything built quite like it. I mean, it's a really special building, and it's pure. I mean, you go in there, and there's so many things about that station that are, go back 100 years.
Oh yeah.
And
some of the signs.
Yeah, and they say we've got at least one ghost in the place. The guys that have worked there at night said, "Oh yeah, it can be really pretty interesting." And we've got some really special trains too. I mean, we've got a whole range of cars from our 1898 Gertrude Emma, which is an open-end observation car that dates back to 1898 for the Pennsylvania Railroad, and that's a very popular car.
Right.
And the most modern piece of equipment we have, I say, is our locomotive 252 that was delivered a month after I was. So it kind of puts things in perspective. Yeah.
And for me, I've been a train guy my entire life. I've always been fascinated by trains, and so moving up here, that was one of the first places I ever went to, was the Conway Scenic, and just looking at it and I love it when all of a sudden a new car shows up and the Bud car. I love the Bud car. It's just, to me,
that's my
just
favorite.
A fun.
We call it Millie, and I grew up with the Bud cars. I mean, I rode them around the Boston area, and I rode them out of Springfield, Mass. when I was a kid. Our Bud car, people go, "Well, it's just a commuter train." No, it's a lot more than a commuter train. The ride quality on that car, the Bud Company of Philadelphia, they specialized. They were the Cadillacs of railway car builders. I mean, they made this. This was the car they wanted to save American railroads.
Wow.
They didn't succeed in that, but they sure built a lot of these things, and they're beautiful cars. They're fun to ride in. you can get a forward view. You can kind of look out the front and you can see where you're going. So it's really good for that. And nice comfortable seats and nice big windows.
Right, and so it looks like a train car, but it's motorized. So
yeah,
you can
it's self-propelled.
either attach it to a train or it can be self-propelled. I've seen it a bunch.
Yeah, it's
just these
designed
past few
really
weeks.
to be, this one that we have is self-propelled, and we usually run it by itself. That's what it's for. And we were going to be running it all week for the snow train, but immediately right from the beginning, which was last Saturday, we looked at the figures and we're like, there's no way we're going to make it with that. So we put together a train set. It was basically our Valentine set, and then we had to add cars.
Yeah.
So we've got capacity with overflow. We've got room for 175 people on the snow train. We've got a snack car where we've got snacks and beverages on board. You can get a hot chocolate. You can get things to eat, hot dogs. And what we're using is we've put some of our first class cars. So we have our Gertrude Emma, we have our Chikora. I can't pronounce that right. How do you pronounce that here?
Chikora.
Yeah, we have got that car. And we've got a bunch of different cars you can kind of sample. And these are cars that we usually charge a first class for, one fare for the whole train. And we're going out and back 7 times a day, starting at 7:30 in the morning, every 90 minutes from our station here in North Conway to the Attitash ski area. And we go back and forth, and you can stay out there if you want. You can go out the first train and come back on the last one, or whatever works for you. We're really pretty flexible.
And what a great idea. Both, you can do it, you can say, hey, I can avoid the traffic, I can avoid the parking, or it's just so much fun to be able to do it. And we're looking at the promo here.
Yeah, this a video I put together just last week. We do things quick here at the Conway Scenic. Dave's work is a real kind of mover and shaker, and he's an ideas man, and I'm kind of his left-hand man for making the ideas happen as far as the media part is concerned. We can put together photos and stuff quickly. And Dave got all kinds of views for the future. One of the things that we're going to be doing is we're renaming the Notch train. The historic run that we've had since about 1996 from here up to Crawford Notch has been the Notch train. Well, we're bringing back the Mountaineer. And the Mountaineer is a name that goes back more than 100 years, but it's famous for there was a streamlined train jointly run by the Boston and Maine and the Maine Central, starting in the 1930s, and it ran through the early 50s. But we're bringing back the name Mountaineer because it went from the Boston and Maine to the Maine Central up over Crawford Notch.
Yep.
And Dave likes the concept of a transcontinental streamliner, and that's what we have. We have a transcontinental streamliner. I'm like, well, why not just call it the Mountaineer? Because that was a streamliner. This is the past and the future.
Right.
So it's the Mountaineer to Crawford Notch, and it'll run right from here, from North Conway up to Crawford's. And this is one of the world's premier journeys. It's got beautiful scenery. I mean, it looks like the Rockies if you hadn't seen it. This is really neat. We've got 2 Vista Domes. Now, we talked about the Bud RDC. Another of Bud's genius is the Vista Dome. It's actually the concept was a General Motors concept. The vice president of General Motors was on one of their locomotives going up through the Colorado Rockies during World War II. He goes, it's a real shame that the best view in the house is only appreciated by the crew. So he invented this car, and General Motors built the first few, and then Bud basically licensed it. And we've got 2 of them. We've got one from the former Great Northern, one from the former Burlington. Our Burlington car is Ronda Lee, and that's probably our nicest car because you can sit upstairs. It's all glass, 360-degree panorama, and we'll be running that pretty much from June forward on our Mountaineer. And that is and it's a dining car, so you can actually have a first-class meal. We've got our own culinary team. They make beautiful food, and they cook stuff to order. We're one of the few railways in North America that actually cook our food on the train.
Oh, that's terrific.
Amtrak has been phasing out their kitchen cars. We're doing it. We've got 2 kitchen cars. We feature onboard dining, and it's a first-class experience.
Well, I know you had it this past week for the Valentine's Day.
We did.
And I'm sure you're going to have more events like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've got all kinds of events planned. We've got a Mother's Day brunch train coming up for Mother's Day, and we'll be doing different special events all throughout the year. I don't know what some of them are because we're still kind of pulling it all together. We've got all kinds of ideas in addition to our regular trains. We've got our 3 basic runs. We talked about the Mountaineer, and we've got 2 valley runs. One goes up the valley to Bartlett. The other's our traditional run that goes down the old Boston and Maine line. It's kind of our heritage run down to Conway. And passengers can be on either one. They're all good journeys. But I really stress the Mountaineer. That's the one you want.
Well, that'll be great. And so the best way to do it, conwayscenic.com is your website. So keep track of that. because, like you say, there's always going to be new stuff, and just all the changes you've had just in the last couple of years, I'm sure we're going to expect a lot more. And so, Brian, thank you so much for coming by today.
Well, hey, it's been great. It's always fun to be on TV. This is really neat. So I hope that people will enjoy our railroad and come and take a ride on our snow train. We only have, till the end of the month, 7 times a day through February 29th, and it's a lot of fun. You'll see vistas you'll never see in the summer because there's no leaves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brian, again, thanks so much.
Hey.
And we'll be back here in a minute on White Mountains Today.